And I just thought about it and I was like, hey, you know what? It's Thanksgiving. I've had a pretty long day. And I was doing some work as well on Thanksgiving on a holiday. Tonight, I think I'm going to have a bit of cabbage. I'll have, I'm probably going to have some of the turkey. I'm trying to cut down on the meat intake. I know I've cut out beef completely.
Oh, great. That was one of the early changes that I made in my lifestyle change is I cut out red meat. And the rest stayed for a good while, but I find that meat makes me sluggish.
Yeah. And Annii, when I was in Montreal, just going back to how I got into fasting, I would go on a run. I would go to the gym in the morning, and then after studying, I would go for a 4 p.m. run around Montreal because I lived maybe 7 minutes from Montreal. So I would run listening to podcasts, and this guy called Tim Ferriss, he used to have the #1 podcast on iTunes, and one time I'm running and he's interviewing this guy called Dr. Dom D'Agostino, and he's done a lot of work into intermittent fasting, and he started going into the subcellular benefits of intermittent fasting, and I was just like, wow, this is really, really beneficial, and I just started I was probably 3 months into fasting. And the other thing, Annii, I was thinking about it, and I realized that, in evolutionary terms, we've only started eating this whole breakfast, lunch, dinner thing, only very recently in a way. Because I don't think cavemen were waking up in the morning and being like, hey, listen, we're going to make scrambled, fire up the skillet, we're going to make scrambled eggs.
And put on the coffee.
Exactly, you put on the coffee with MCT oil.
Yeah, no, of course. Of course. So back to the question about what you eat in a meal. If you were to focus, and not that it's as strict necessarily all the time when you're doing intermittent fasting, but
yes,
macro-wise, where do you see that? Do you take in a moderate to low or high amount of carbohydrates? What's your protein intake like? Your fat?
Carbohydrates definitely low. Very, very low.
You find that a lot with people who do IF. Yeah.
A lot. And that started as well when I was in Montreal. And then protein intake, right now, I try to do 4, maybe 5 days of just plant-based proteins. So I've got a pressure cooker that I use at home, and I do a lot of beans.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, different beans, pinto beans, it could be kidney beans and so forth. And then fat profile, oh gosh, maybe plant-based. Sometimes I'll go for the animal, maybe some butter, some MCT oil, a little bit of coconut oil. I was overdoing coconut oil about 2 years ago, and then I sort of reduced my intake because I would put coconut oil with almost everything, So, yeah,
I do find it interesting that you do practice some level of plant-based lifestyle. It's really fascinating that there are a lot of people who are not vegetarian or vegan who are seeing the benefits of that flexitarian, reducitarian approach of, okay, I can see that it's not the greatest thing for my health. There's a lot of people out there in health and wellness who see meat as this 100% vital thing, and that men are saying that they're going to lose testosterone if they don't eat meat, which is a really preposterous argument, really.
Oh, completely preposterous.
You look, I have to quote this. There's a guy that I follow on Instagram. His username is Jacked on Plants. He does coaching. Yeah. And he said this thing about there's that myth that tofu gives men man boobs.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, I think I have man boobs from eating all this soy, but they're actually pretty hard, and I think you call them pecs. So I had to laugh at that. But no, I find, and it's really nice that, once again, people who do IF are a bit more open-minded usually to doing the lower carb and doing the plant-based. Once again, though, within plant-based, there are a lot of people who are doing the high carb, low fat, and, I always express a bit of concern for that. Yeah. There are a lot of good carbs out there. Yeah. But there's definitely a lot of carbs that they don't look terrible. You've got these whole wheat breads and pastas, but should we be having them twice a day? No. Should we even be having them daily?
Yeah, exactly. No.
I don't eat bread every day. No. I probably, I don't even really eat real pasta on any consistent basis, I use those shirataki noodles. You can get them at a lot of stores. They're really great.
Yeah.
I use
really,
them for a
really
lot
nice.
Oh, they're really great. And there's nothing in them. It's all insoluble plant fiber.
You know, so it's something that when you start doing a lot of self-experimentation, you're like, okay, let me change my diet. Instead of eating, hard carbs like rice or potatoes or whatever it may be, let me try these noodles, these plant-based noodles and so forth.
And maybe before doing IF or experimenting with adding new foods and taking away other foods, you probably never would have thought to do that.
No, I never would have. Well, in a way, I did, because remember early on when you were talking about the fact that you were a little bit chubby? For myself, what happened, my story, is I was incredibly lanky. Then I got into senior high school in Zimbabwe. If you want to be the man on campus in high school, you want to play rugby.
Right.
Here it's probably football, it's probably basketball and so forth, but rugby is the sport back home. And taking me as a lanky kid, I figured, well, I need to put on a lot of weight. So that's what happened. So 18, 19, when I was 17, 18, I put on a lot of weight. And then first year university, I came here and I was in residence and I put on even more weight because you got the freshman, freshman 25
I made a joke. It's the freshman 15, but for me it was the freshman 40 or 50.
See? So Annii, moved out of residence, spent a year in residence, moved out, and I was like, okay, I need to make lifestyle changes. So the first thing that I did was I started consuming a lot more vegetables, cutting out meat, and I found myself dropping a lot of weight. And then I kept on going down that path. And if thinking about it, I was going through a rhythm of fasting and periods of fasting and not fasting.
Sometimes we don't realize we're doing it.
Yeah, you don't. So basically, when the second lifestyle self-experimentation bout happened whilst I was in Montreal, and then when I moved here, that's when I was like, hey, listen, I need to become a little bit more regimented with this and just go through it with it. And I've been doing it for the last 3 years.
That is so awesome. Yeah. I love hearing how you can start in one place and then kind of accidentally get into something and before you know it, your life is just changing before your eyes and you're not always aware of what's happening. Once again, before I read that book, I didn't know how I had actually lost weight for once, and instead of just yo-yoing, as I said before. So since you've started fasting, one of the biggest things that people find with weight control is that social facilitation of eating. How do you find, and we've talked about being able to stick to your principles more, so do you find that you just don't have much of an issue when you're in a social situation and there's food around and it's past your time? Yeah,
I just let everyone know I'm fasting. They're like, what? Yeah, I'm fasting. And people just respect it, and I don't try to succumb to peer pressure in a way. I've always kind of been resistant to that. My mom sort of raised me to be that way.
Right.
Yeah, but otherwise I just let it all out. And then what's fascinating, Annii, is that when you tell people that I'm fasting, you find people after dinner, they come to you and they're like, yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about fasting? You're
I love it.
You probably should have started by not eating that food. Annii, I was going to ask, do you drink a lot of water? Because I drink tons of water.
I posted on my Instagram a while back, which is when I'm fasting, H2O is my best friend. Just kidding, it's always my best friend. If you're hungry, just drink water and you will guaranteed have less of it. Maybe you won't eliminate it, but it'll reduce it a lot.
I think in a day I probably drink, maybe 4 liters of water.
I'm probably not too far off. When I'm home, I'll take a 1 liter mason jar. Yeah. And if I'm going to be home a lot throughout the day, I can easily go through 3 or 4 of those. Yeah. Now, when I'm on the go, my water bottle that I use, my little Contigo, that takes 500 to 600 mils. Yeah. So I'll probably go through maybe, 4 of those. So, and then I'll go home and I'll go to the big boy mason jar and so I wouldn't say I'm too far off from that, but I think that 3 is my minimum because I just, I have people always saying you must go to the bathroom some lot, and I'm like, well, yeah, I do, but I definitely think it's worth it.
It's worth it.
I don't feel, and you know what, the biggest thing, I had someone who would tell me once, I would be like, oh, I'm hungry.
Yeah.
You're just dehydrated.
Traded.
Drink water. Or I'm tired and it's like 7 p.m. Just drink water.
And I love the fact that you also drink green tea. Because I used to drink a lot of green tea, but not anymore because I find that I get really hungry.
Yeah, it's really great for really getting that digestive process going.
Oh,
yeah.
It's a big catalyst.
And
Big
I know
catalyst.
somebody who has a relative who's, my God, I don't know if she's like in her 80s, like it's a grandmother.
Yeah.
And she has been eating very like unhealthy foods all of her life. And granted, she is like a little overweight, but has lived a really long life because with every meal she drinks green tea.
You gotta be kidding me.
And she's in like her 80s and she eats like fried food for every meal. And it's just really fascinating how that green tea can just counteract. I mean, I'm not encouraging anybody to go, down to the chicken place and get a bucket of fried chicken and then go home and have green tea and then you're fine. But no matter, what you're going to do, whether it's excessive or not, it's a great option to have if you feel like your digestion is going to be called into question for whatever reason, then use it. And, there are times that I don't know how strict you are on what constitutes breaking a fast. It varies for some people.
Sure.
I usually try to stick with just water, but if I really feel like I want a cup of tea, sometimes I'll just add a little soy milk or add a little coconut milk. I won't really consider breaking the fast, but there are times I do consider it breaking the fast. So I find that it's a really nice alternative to drinking black tea when I'm on a fast.
Exactly.
I find that it doesn't always make me hungry because of the fact that water is really going in there and filling me up. I'm getting the little tiny bit of caffeine that I might want, and I don't think it's destructive to a fast if you've only got like an hour or two left. If I was maybe halfway through, I wouldn't use green tea alone as my way of getting me through, but it's definitely really helpful.
Very helpful. Very, very helpful.
So before we go, I know that you've brought some information.
Yes.
So you wanted to discuss some known benefits of intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
So what are some, and I know we've definitely probably touched on a lot of these today, but you've got some citations. So for anybody at home who thinks that this is some new age pseudoscience, we've got proof.
All right, so do you want me to go?
Yeah, go.
All right, so intermittent fasting changes the function of cells, genes, and hormones. You're looking at some of the changes that occur in the body during fasting. Regarding insulin levels, blood levels of insulin drop significantly, which facilitates fat burning. Human growth hormone, HGH. The blood levels of growth hormone may increase as much as fivefold. Fivefold, Annii, that's incredible.
God.
Higher levels of this hormone facilitate fat burning and muscle gain and have numerous other benefits. Those come with citations as well. Cellular repair. The body induces important cellular repair processes, such as removing waste material from cells.
That autophagy.
Yeah, exactly. And then gene expression. This was something that I definitely do believe in. There are beneficial changes in several genes and molecules related to longevity and protection against disease. The other one, of course, which is very obvious to a lot of people, is intermittent fasting can help you lose weight and belly fat.
Mm-hmm.
I've experienced that myself.
Once again, Bo, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, whether I'm seeing you in the library or in the lab. And so I can't thank you enough for coming on the show because this has been a lot of fun for me.
It has been, even including myself.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah. I'm glad. No, this show has been a great avenue to discuss topics I'm very passionate about. And I extend my invitation for discussion with all of you lovely listeners at home. If you ever want to talk to me about any aspect of health and wellness, I encourage you to contact me on Instagram at Annii Gets Healthy. That's ANNII Gets Healthy. You can find me on Facebook there as well. You can email me at anniegetshealthy@gmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at AnnieKHealth. That's ANNIIK Health. If you're listening on CHMR, you didn't get to listen to the whole thing, feel free to look this show up, Annii Gets Healthy, on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. This has been another fantastic episode of Annii Gets Healthy. Thank you to my friend Bo for tuning in.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So until next week, this is Annii K saying I love you all. Please love yourselves. Give yourself a healthy dose of self-forgiveness after a potential week of indulgence. And do take care. I'll see you all next Thursday.